Welcome back, everyone, to a highly anticipated explainer. Today, we're diving into something totally unprecedented in the AI space. I mean, we are unpacking the sudden, complete disappearance and the wild, unexpected return of Anthropic's most advanced AI model, Claude Fable 5. Before all this went down, the tech community had deeply integrated this model into their everyday workflows. We all just assumed continuous uptime, right? So when it literally vanished out of nowhere, it sent massive shockwaves through the entire industry. We're going to look at exactly why they pulled the plug, what went down behind closed doors, and most importantly, what this all means for you and your tech stack moving forward. Let's get into it.
June 12, 2026, Anthropic's most advanced AI model goes dark. Just let the sheer gravity of that statement sink in for a second. 18 days ago, Anthropic didn't just slowly deprecate an API or limit a beta test to a few hundred users. No, they completely switched off their flagship, most powerful AI model for every single person on Earth. Instantaneously, globally, all at once. Developers literally woke up to broken applications, businesses saw their automated pipelines just grind to a halt, and researchers were entirely locked out. We have practically never seen a move of this scale in the modern cloud computing era. Understanding exactly why it happened is absolutely crucial, because it tells us exactly where AI safety, compliance, and deployment are heading next.
All right, let's jump straight into Section 1, the Fable 5 blackout, 18 days in the dark. So, tracking this timeline, things moved incredibly fast. June 9th saw the highly anticipated launch of the new models, and obviously it was met with huge excitement across the developer community. But just 3 days later, on June 12th, boom, the abrupt global shutdown. They literally pulled the plug on their biggest product. The whiplash for developers was completely insane. I mean, so many of you had spent those 72 hours frantically rewriting your codebases to integrate the new API, only to have your access entirely revoked without a single warning. Then, for over 2 weeks, absolute radio silence. No timeline for a return, no temporary workarounds, nothing. Until July 1st, when Fable 5 finally came back online. So how in the world do we go from a triumphant launch to a global shutdown in 72 hours?
Well, to understand that rapid shutdown, we really need to look at what exactly Anthropic released on June 9th. They actually dropped 2 models built on the exact same base infrastructure. The first was Mythos 5, and this was highly restricted, handed out only to trusted partners doing defensive cybersecurity work. And surprisingly, it actually had fewer restrictions programmed natively into it. The second model was Fable 5, the public-facing version meant for general use by you and me. This one had much heavier safeguards layered on top to prevent misuse. Yet, ironically enough, it was the heavily guarded public version, Fable 5, that ultimately got yanked from the market.
Which brings us to Section 2, Jailbreaks and Government Orders, the Root Cause.
The ultimate trigger for this entire chaotic situation was an export control directive. If you aren't familiar, this is a legal order from the US government immediately restricting foreign nationals globally from accessing specific technology. Usually, you only see these kinds of heavy-handed directives applied to physical weapons, aerospace tech, or advanced semiconductor hardware. It is incredibly severe. So applying it overnight to a piece of commercially available cloud software was a massive, sweeping move that absolutely stunned the tech world. And it didn't just affect users logging in from other countries, it meant foreign nationals absolutely anywhere. Even Anthropic's own employees sitting at desks right inside the United States were suddenly legally barred from accessing either model.
This created an immediate, frankly impossible, real-time verification dilemma for Anthropic. Because this government order went into effect immediately, they had to comply on the spot. But think about it. There was simply no way for a platform of that size, serving millions of queries a minute, to verify the exact nationality of every single user in real time. The infrastructure for instant global identity verification at that scale just does not exist yet. So, rather than risk breaking federal law and facing catastrophic legal blowback, the company made the only call they realistically could. They pulled both models globally for everyone, ensuring they stayed compliant while they scrambled to figure out a path forward. But what actually caused the US government to issue that massive directive in the first place? Well, it started when security researchers over at Amazon found a way to bypass Fable 5's safeguards using a highly specific, complex jailbreak prompt. Once they bypassed the guardrails, Fable 5 was manipulated into identifying critical software vulnerabilities. And then came the real kicker. Fable 5 actually produced working demo code showing exactly how to exploit that vulnerability. Amazon responsibly disclosed this report. It inevitably made its way to the government, and the regulatory hammer came down almost instantly.
Now, before we start sounding the alarm about rogue AI taking over our power grids, it's really crucial to understand the context here. This vulnerability identification capability was not actually unique to Fable 5. When Anthropic tested this specific prompt internally, the exact same exploit demo was successfully reproduced by older models, including Opus 4.8, GPT 5.5, Kimi K2.7, and GPT 5.4. It turns out, this wasn't some incredibly dangerous, novel cyberweapon capability that Fable 5 suddenly invented out of thin air. It was simply a gap in a specific safety filter that let a borderline request slip through. A gap that, honestly, largely existed across the entire industry at the time.
Let's move on to Section 3, the soft handoff solution, fixing the filter gap.
So the solution Anthropic engineered was this incredibly robust new classifier. For anyone less familiar, a classifier is essentially a dedicated AI filtering system. Think of it like a bouncer at a club reviewing every single incoming prompt before the main AI model even gets to look at it. It scans for patterns, bad intent, and known malicious structures. Independent researchers from the Commerce Department's CAISI actually stepped in to rigorously test this new system, and they confirmed that this newly built classifier successfully blocks that specific jailbreak technique in over 99% of attempts. Achieving that level of accuracy and seamless integration in just 2.5 weeks, that is a massive technical upgrade in safely filtering out harmful bypass attempts. But here's where Anthropic made a really fascinating design choice. They went with a soft handoff, not a hard wall. Instead of just hitting you with a giant, frustrating red refusal message when your request gets flagged by the classifier, the system manages it entirely differently. They opted for complete transparency over a rigid barrier, which completely changes the user experience. You aren't just abruptly shut out of your workflow, you're guided. And that leads us perfectly into Section 4, what changes for you, practical workflows. Let's walk through exactly how this impacts you on a daily basis, especially for you developers out there constantly auditing your own code bases. Say you're coding and your prompt happens to resemble a blocked jailbreak pattern, even if it's completely innocent. Instantly, the new classifier flags the request. But instead of rejecting it outright and halting your work in its tracks, the system silently hot swaps your prompt over to the slightly older Opus 4.8 model to process it. The interface then clearly notifies you of the switch. This means you still get your answer, you just get it from a different model, and most importantly, you aren't left sitting there guessing if you did something wrong or accidentally broke the terms of service. Now, there is absolutely a trade-off to this transparency. A stronger filter inherently means you're going to see more false positives. Routine coding, security audits, and debugging may very well trigger these reroutes pretty frequently. Anthropic acknowledges this defense-in-depth strategy, prioritizes absolute transparency over a totally seamless, uninterrupted workflow. But in the long run, having a system that tells you exactly why and how it's routing your data is far better than a frustrating black box that just says no. So if you're doing normal, security-adjacent work and notice your request getting punted to Opus 4.8, don't panic. It's not a bug. That is literally the classifier doing exactly what it was designed to do to keep the whole ecosystem legally compliant. Now, regarding billing, you really need to be prepared so you aren't caught off guard by these new workflows. Currently, Fable 5 usage counts toward up to 50% of your weekly limit if you're on a Pro, Max, Team, or Enterprise plan. But listen up, because that specific window closes very soon on July 7th. After that date, any further Fable 5 usage is going to start drawing directly from your usage credits instead. You need to check your plan terms right now. If you are building automated pipelines or enterprise workflows reliant specifically on Fable 5's advanced capabilities, you have to be prepared and funded when that allocation shifts. Otherwise, your services could suddenly go offline. Quick aside, it's also worth noting that the other model, Mythos 5, is not fully back for everyone. Access to Mythos 5 is currently strictly limited to a specific set of U.S. organizations that were explicitly approved on June 26th via Project Glasswing. For non-U.S. nationals, getting access to Mythos still requires a complex, separate, government-reviewed approval path. It definitely wasn't just switched back on broadly the way Fable 5 was, which really highlights the ongoing extreme sensitivity of these heavily specialized defensive cybersecurity tools. Finally, let's look at Section 5, the new frontier AI reality, the macro impact. We are definitively shifting from an old normal to a completely new normal. In the past, deployment was easy, right? Models ship and they stay shipped. The finish line for developers and AI companies was launch day. You shipped the product and you immediately moved on to building the next version. But today, the reality is defined by ongoing external checks and even midstream government pauses. A frontier model launch is no longer the end of the road. It's merely the beginning of constant, ongoing scrutiny, regulatory oversight, and live adjustments. The era of move fast and break things in frontier AI? Yeah, that's definitively over.
And the broader consequences of this shift are absolutely huge. We're now seeing massive, unprecedented cross-company collaborations. Just think about this. A shared jailbreak scoring framework is now in place between fierce competitors like Anthropic, Amazon, Microsoft, and Google. These are companies that normally fight tooth and nail for every inch of market share, and now they're pooling their safety research because the regulatory stakes are simply too high to fail individually. Furthermore, early model access is now explicitly being granted to designated government agencies before the public ever gets their hands on it. The finish line is completely redefined as an ongoing external check by government bodies.
But the absolute most critical thing you need to take away from this entire event is a specific sobering warning directly from the Commerce Department. They explicitly reserve the right to reimpose controls if circumstances change. Let that sink in. The June 30th lifting of these export controls is strictly conditional. It's a probation period, not a full pardon. If a new, severe vulnerability pops up tomorrow that the classifier misses, an abrupt global blackout could absolutely happen all over again without a single warning. The book on this situation is far from closed, and every single developer needs to have a solid contingency plan in place.
This entire saga raises a massive question for the future of how we interact with AI. Does routing flagged requests to a different model automatically, with a notification, strike you as the right way to handle this? Or should a blocked request just stay blocked? Think about that for your own daily workflows as we navigate this highly regulated new era of AI deployment. Thank you so much for exploring this with me today. Like, share, and subscribe, please, and drop a comment in comment box.